Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, you would know I didn't put much energy into that opening today. Oh my goodness, it has been one. Sometimes some of you might be able to relate to that when you have these problems come into your life, when you are down for the count, that sometimes, who knows why, something comes along and gives you another kick in the side. If you guys were hanging out with me yesterday, you knew that I had hurt myself a little bit I went for some really long walks this past week. And on top of that, I really loaded down in my gear. I know I was carrying 40 pound packs, and I believe it was too much for me. And yesterday I woke up and I could barely move my arms. I can move my arms today. Thank goodness the pain is out of my arms, but it is in my neck, it's in my back, and I don't have really much energy to me. I stayed in bed all day long. I got up once an hour because I got really uncomfortable. Got up once an hour, sit down, make myself a cup of coffee, take a couple of sips, and then within 20 minutes, I was down for the count again and had to go back and lay in bed. I'm grateful I was able to doze off a few times, so I was able to get a few hours sleep in the past, I don't know, 15 hours or so in laying down, and it helped out a ton. And I'm not one for medication, but in taking care of myself, I don't want myself to suffer. And it was by my own hands and not paying attention, thinking that I'm 20 years old when I'm 65. So I woke up tonight. I didn't wake up. I was just laying in bed. I had my speakers turned around to the bed, and I was just laying there taking in content, knowing how important it was going to be for me to show up tonight because it's a very important topic that I want to talk about. And this topic also makes me a little bit nervous in talking about it because I have to express a little bit of my own understandings. You guys know when I refer to God, I refer to God as whoever or whatever. I am a realist in life, but at the same time, I have been a witness, a participant, and a receiver in the beautiful things that shouldn't come into my life, but in the nick of time, they have come in and saved my life. Saved my life, saved my butt, maybe saved my life. Who's to say, right? Because being a realist, I have this idea that God is actually not, well, he is ancient, right? He is ancient when you put him into respect of mankind. But I truly believe that whoever or whatever is somewheres in the future, far in the future. You guys know I love history, and I delve in deep. I love the Neolithic era. But when I was a little kid, it was dinosaurs and then Egyptology. And I kind of dabbled in different cultures during the course of my life in history. But as of late, and when I say as of late, in the past 10 years, coming up with some of my own ideas that were deep inside of me, but somehow found its way to the surface. And when it found its way to the surface, I jumped on it. And I've been delving into these topics, but because I explore the inside and the outside here on my channel, I thought it was something that maybe I would be able to just move in on my own, right? We all have our own beliefs, right? Our own religions. And I believe in every single one of them, to be honest, right? What we think about is realized. And I would never disrespect all these amazing religions out there. And not just amazing, but you have to be your own witness in your own experiences and in your own beliefs and in what you know for yourself to be true, to be able to decide for yourself whether they are the be all to end alls, the one true God, or possibly you do think like me. But because we don't vocalize these ideas, these well, they are experiments, aren't they? Because it's only unknown until it's known. And for myself, you guys know I go deep. You know that I take in a lot of different perspectives. But that doesn't mean that I believe these perspectives, because I take my lessons from all different people, human souls that are in different religions. Hello, Tammy. Hello, dear. And thank you so much for your prayers last night, Tammy. They did work. I was able to get about 2 hours sleep yesterday, and then maybe another hour of sleep this afternoon. And like I said, I got kicked. I have not had a pushback like this in, I can't even remember, over a decade for sure. And I have to read into that, right? I really have to read into it, especially because of what I wanted to talk about tonight, and recognizing that I just couldn't go out today. I couldn't go walking to the store, and I wanted to pick up some Tylenol really, really bad. I even went downstairs to the laundry room because we have a vending machine there. I thought possibly they might have stocked up on some aspirin or some Tylenol. They sell those little containers often when you go to the mall inside the vending machines. And I was a little disappointed there wasn't. But I came upstairs and I took both an ibuprofen and an aspirin. Not only that, knowing that I was coming in for my live tonight and feeling the way that I was right in this moment. You should have seen me, what I looked like a half an hour ago. I think right now I am refreshed a little bit. I'm just going to open up my window to get a little bit of fresh air. And I had a shower, and I stood in that shower for a half an hour. My last 5 minutes, I had to run around to, right, make a cup of tea and get some cranberry cocktail here, and then also be able to set up for my live. Oh my goodness. I have a big light here, and the light seems pretty decent at this moment. And I didn't even turn it on today, and it seems to be working okay. A little miracle. I'll take that and be grateful for that. So to get back to this idea, what we think about is realized. And I came across an Instagram post yesterday. I don't know if you guys know the story of Pluto's cave, and it was in cartoon form, and it was people in the cave and somebody outside the door of the cave trying to entice them to come out, but they were all sitting there with their laptops, right, being entertained, or right, just not experimenting and exploring in their life. Like they were truly prisoners in that cave. So it kind of made me think, in my life, was I that way? You know, I always, chose truth over belonging, right? If I hadn't, chosen truth, I would have been a liar, a cheater. And it's not to say that I never cheated, that I never took shortcuts. I most definitely did. But I had to understand that I was a broken empath, not pure empath, not righteous and glorious, right? Like possibly Mary Magdalene. I was reading a little bit about her tonight when they found her scrolls from 1896. They found the scrolls of Mary Magdalene and they chose not to add it in to the library of the Bible. Kind of makes you wonder as to why, right? Because that's man, that's power dictating what's floating out there. And maybe in my own ideas, maybe I understood that possibly Mary Magdalene played a larger role. Of course, men were ruling the world. They were conquering the world, right? And women didn't have much say in what was going on. Hello, Eugene. Didn't have much say in what was going on. Then that made me think, in her perspectives and being a partner with Jesus in, right, putting out the word to the world, that maybe her voice was stifled and maybe Jesus had to take credit for a lot of her insights because if she voiced them, if she presented them to the world, they wouldn't have been taken seriously because women didn't have a place really, except in cooking food and right, taking care of the household and having children, right? And even back then, men were allowed to have numerous wives, and it's still going on in the world right now. It definitely is. But I think that is a big problem because that promotes jealousy and resentment, which is a big trait of the borderline. Now, I said tonight that we were going to talk about the borderlines, but you can't talk about the borderlines without talking about the broken empaths, right? And the failed narcissists, because they were groomed to serve the borderlines, right? They were groomed that way. They had to work super hard, like myself, to even have a voice, right? And I'm so grateful for this digital age, this age of AI learning that lets me have that voice. But I never expected that my platform was going to be a place for that voice. But again, somebody has to step forward, right? To voice some of these understandings that you wouldn't even considered if you were programmed by people who wanted that power, right? People who wanted to destiny swap, right? With you because they could see your light, they can see your kindnesses, they can see what you were doing for others, and in jealousy and resentment they wanted to take that from you, right? And we know that people who do for others, right, quite often they are empaths. In this day and age, I would have to say, with what's going on with this power and making sure that women did not have a voice, right, that we became broken in what we were really supposed to bring to the table. And I believe that. So, in my curiosity today, because excuse me, I spent almost all day in bed, and I shouldn't be moving my hands and stuff like that. I'm going to try and just keep my hands in my lap, but I can't. This is how I express myself sometimes. You guys know that, right? And when I was laying in bed today, I wasn't getting up and picking the perspectives, the content creators, or even the content that was being presented to me. And yet, Google, YouTube, they knew the subjects that I was going to be talking tonight. And in laying in bed and trying not to focus in my discomfort, I truly focused in what was being presented to me. It wasn't an appetizer platter because I didn't get any choice in that. But I think in my condition of where I was at in my physicality, it served me so well because I might have been jumping from topic to topic, and I have been delving into a little bit of that stupid, monotonous stuff, right? That's online just to take me away from the heavy that I have been in. But that is feeling that rush, feeling that need, feeling that priority and importance of what I want to bring to the table that I felt that I needed to really get a handle on some of these topics. But like I said, if we're going to talk about the borderlines, we have to include the broken empaths and the failed narcissists in that. They're not even pure. They're just kind of something in the middle, and they have been created in that. And then the true empaths and the true um, narcissists, they're being demonized, right? Because they're so messed up because they are being trained to be broken, right? To be broken. So that I believe that we don't have people like me coming online and having a voice and having a say and actually influencing people that might even know these things as a truth for themselves because they don't want to stir the pot, because they don't want to be targeted in what they're doing, or in not knowing that there was a possibility that they could heal in what they're doing. And I'm not saying that I am completely healed as an empath, but I'm doing my darndest every single day because it's important for me to choose truth over belonging. And if you guys hang out with me, right, this is where I belong. And I feel that anybody that comes in and hangs out with me is resonating in some form in my truth. Maybe not in these ideas of destiny swappers. And actually, there are religions out there and Christian religions too that practice destiny swapping, right? And these religions are situated in Africa, right? They are African Christianity groups and borderlines, right? They want the empath's position because I believe that the empaths and the narcissists are supposed to be moving together, but I think it's been made to be an impossibility because neither is going to budge from their truth because they're healed. They have their truth. But what about the broken empaths and the failed narcissists? Could they be another group? Could they be the next stage of evolution because they understand their pain, because they know intent? I'm hoping they know intent. I feel intent consistently. But again, in putting your foot forward and being the first one to appear in some of these subjects, I kept my mouth shut. That's the way that I was programmed not to have those voices, not to go against the grain, right? To turn the other cheek, to honor thy mother and thy father and not call them on what they were getting wrong, right? And being utilized that way to possibly make their existence, possibly for sure, make their existence feel better. I bump into people all the time. You guys have heard me talk about it, where I bump into people and I swear that I know them from somewhere. And I'm not even sure if it's necessarily that I'm recognizing them visually, right? But their souls for sure. And sometimes I say, have we met before? And sometimes they're totally shocked, right? They scurry away. And sometimes they just deny it. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. And then I'll throw a couple of work positions I had out there because I'm just convinced that I know these people, right? But that's because we move along together, right? Those other parts of me, not Cindy, but those other parts of me, I feel are recognizing, right? These other human souls. But again, because we don't want to step forward and we don't want to say, I remember you, right? Let's work together a little bit better. And also in being broken empaths and failed narcissists, right? That we quite often, if those other parts of us are existing in others, in past ancestors, in generations going back, that maybe we weren't such great characters. We're moving along. You guys know I am a big fan, that a big part of what I do, I believe, is because of our evolution. And I think something out there in the future, just like us, what do you call that? Resurrecting the mammoth or the thylacine or the dodo bird, these animals that are totally extinct now. We lost the last white rhino. There's one left, but it's a female, right? Female. So officially, the white rhino is now extinct. So if they want to keep the white rhino going, they're going to have to, right, do a little bit of DNA, genetic science, medicine, and bring it back to life. But I believe whoever, whatever, right, is in the future, right? That sometimes these characters that come down every once in a while, Jesus and Buddha and Hare Krishna. I use the same examples all the time because off the top of my mind, that's what's coming. But that these people, they come to the surface every once in a while to give us lessons, to help move us along. And if more of us talked about our own understandings, we have these amazing platforms where we can voice our perspectives and just throw them out there and let people pick through them themselves to decide what's true and what's not true. Understanding, right? What you think about is realized, and these religions are real. These gods and sages and saviors out there, I believe that they're real, but there are lots that have been eliminated, right? Lots that have been eliminated from the storyline, sometimes for political reasons, sometimes for having that power over others. Sometimes it's keeping women in their place. And you guys know that we are in the stage of Aquarius right now, right? Where a lot of these, and I've seen some of these new religions pop up. And I'm not too sure if I can even say that they're new religions. I would have to say that they're probably resurrected because they are religions led by women like Mary Magdalene, right? 1896, over 125 years ago, right? They found those scrolls. And how many of us actually are getting lessons from those scrolls, right? especially when she was the very first person to see Jesus when he was resurrected, that she was Jesus's right hand side, right hand man, right? And Peter was always grumbling and complaining. He's one of the 12 disciples, right? Always grumbling and complaining about how close Jesus and Mary Magdalene were. And in that jealousy and resentment, he stirred the pot in that. I grew up, my mother was a borderline. I have been in the lessons for a very long time. That, when I first got into the lessons, because I was getting lessons in narcissism, right? I was listening in, I was sitting in on Professor Sam Vatkin's um, presentations, and I had no idea why it was being presented to me. At first, I thought I was a narcissist. And then I thought possibly it was just for me to understand so I don't get trapped by narcissists. But then I thought they're lessons for me because I grew up in a dynamic family of narcissists and borderlines and empaths and broken empaths and, right, failed narcissists and beautiful human beings at the same time, right? Each one believing something different. My father loved, he was very spiritual, my father, right? He loved law of attraction, and I didn't even know what law of attraction was until I stumbled onto it myself well into my 50s and recognized my father instantly, and it threw me for a loop, and I delved into that myself, and I said, this is the answer, right? So that we can better get along with each other without tearing people down, keeping people under our thumbs, being that authority, keeping women in their place, not having a say in things. And right, it kind of started there, but it's moved off to so many different subjects, right? And in this present, and if you guys have hung out with me for any length of time, you know I'm a realist, right? But I don't just dabble, right, in realism because I have been allowing myself to be drawn into content that I resonate with, that I know to be true for myself, not necessarily, right, true for everybody out there, but there must be people who resonate, right? But I don't hear these conversations being had, and I would follow these persons to the end of the earth if I could trust that there were others out there who had these same ideas as I am, right? Not to say that I'm not broken still in how I feel, right? We are all broken emotionally, physically, mentally. We all are. Every human being out there. But it's the mask we wear, it's how we present ourselves to the world, and also what we take from others that don't belong to us, or we create, right, broken empaths and failed narcissists, and turn them into our little helpers, little slaves to help us move along ourselves, right? And I think that's what I stepped into with my mother. It was the way that I was programmed to keep my mouth shut. And in doing that shadow work consistently, going back to those experiences that I had as a kid and rehashing them and putting myself in my own shoes and putting myself in my parents' shoes and putting myself in my sister's shoes and putting myself in my teacher's shoes, no wonder I woke up to some of the ideas that I did. And no wonder that I'm sitting in on some of these smart content creators out there that are making sure that they have a voice in what they know to be true so that I can pick and choose what I resonate with myself. Now, I'm not feeling very good today, but I did write a few notes here. My dad was very spiritual. My mother loved Jesus, right? I didn't understand my dad. I just thought he was very kind because he practiced mindset. You never knew my dad was angry unless he was biting his tongue, right? And then you go, "Oh my goodness, dad's angry. Better make him a cup of tea. Better figure out what we got wrong." And we would course correct in that. But my father never laid a hand on us kids. He never raised his voice, right, to his kids ever, unless he was protecting them, right? We were all girls. We always had the child molesters after us and everything. So he was very attentive to those characters. And I remember, going to visit a friend at their house, and I must have been about 6 years old. And her father, right, kind of played around a little bit. And I went home and I told my dad, and it was like Transylvania when they have the lights on the poles and everybody with clubs and swords. They didn't have swords and stuff, but my dad probably had a rifle or two. And they marched me down. I remember standing in front of my dad, and we marched down to his house. And I don't know what they did to him because I was too young, and it was kind of a traumatic experience for me already, and especially with only the year before that when a molester got my sister, right? And she, when they got her, it was by knife point. And so my dad was very hypervigilant about his girls, right? And my dad had a beautiful heart, right? But he didn't get it right. He didn't get it right. He was trapped with a borderline that probably promised him that he could be king forever, and she would be his sidekick, right? And he probably thought that whoever or whatever plopped me into his life because he saw my shine, right? Their experiences in going back, that I know that my father saw my shine and he utilized that shine. But he also always made up for the wrongs that he knew was going on in my life. It's not enough. Our children are the most important thing in the world. We have to protect our children, right? Because they are the next generation, right? We don't want to go extinct, right? Maybe I would still be married with a dozen kids in this moment if I had stumbled on to some of these ideas a little bit earlier than what I did. But the digital age, this age of AI learning, has only been around for like 20, 25 years now. It's something fairly new. And I believe, right, we're not going to be able to hide anything, right? Because even though my mother made sure that I stayed in that negative state so that no positivity could ever come into me, so that my other parts of me could surface, it doesn't mean that those other parts of me weren't the experiencers and the witnesses, right? You guys have heard me say that before. I was like a trail cam, I believe, in being dropped into that family, that whoever, whatever knew that something was going on, that something was wrong, and, right, needed to know what it was so we could course correct, that possibly we could make our wrongs right, right? And then to be able, well, they say borderlines can be healed, but they are sneaky, right? Because I was never able to vocalize my truths. Nobody believed me. They always brushed it off as my fault. And it got to the point where these characters would do these things, and I wouldn't even say anything or do anything because I knew I wouldn't be believed anyway. So, in moving forward, I felt that somebody had to step forward and express some of these ideas because they're good ideas. We live in this world of AI learning, and right, humans could not even fathom this generation that we're in with AI learning. It wouldn't have even been a thought. And I'm going to go back into the 50s because in the 60s, they started to become a thought, didn't they? With the Jetsons, with the screens, with the monitors, being able to talk to their bosses, with the robots, right? With the robots and movies, right? And movies and they might have been exaggerated, but it was what we could handle in the moment. But in this age that we live in right now, I think we're able to handle a little bit more. And I think it's in that partnership with the human, not to get rid of the human, not to kill it off and just be God, just to be a frequency. And it happens. I've run into those characters myself, and it's hard for them to shine in the world because they're stumbling along like bumper cars. And if they had their humans, if they were able to give those miracles, I said to this one lady, she was a transvestite, right? But she was woke to these ideas. And I asked her because she really had a connection to God. I said, why was there no, and I won't say her real name from when she first woke up. It was a very traumatic life that she lived, right? Why was there no miracle for, let's call her Linda? Why was there no miracle for Linda to wake up and partner with you? And yet there was that miracle that I was able to wake up and get some work done, right? So it's interesting topics out there, but something to consider. This world is so vast. There's so much that we don't understand, right? Out there that we have not been privy to, that we have been blindfolded in. 1896, they found the scrolls of Mary Magdalene, very important scrolls, because Mary Magdalene was a very, very important character in the time of Jesus, right? Very important. And not to have those truths surface. And yet, now in this age of AI learning, that we're able to create, right? New religions. And it's I'm doing that because do we need more religions, or these the same gods and sages and amazing souls that are just coming back from one lifetime after another lifetime to take in their lessons so that they can better serve the world, so that we don't go extinct, so that we keep going until we're at that stage. Because, right, that saying, God created us in his image. And if whoever, whatever is in the future, right? And is helping mankind to evolve, possibly we went extinct. And just like the mammoth, we are being uh, resurrected, right? Like the white rhino and the dodo bird, we are being resurrected in different petri dishes. And it's in just that idea of allowing ourselves to be willing to be steered in a direction that will eventually get us there. But in the moment, we're all so divided, right? We're all so divided. Okay, you guys, let's get into a card today, and then I'm just going to go and lay down. Call it a night, right? And I believe that, right, this was bad today. Like, I haven't had a day like this in over 10 years, right? I'd get up for 20 minutes and then the pain would shoot through me and I would have to go lay down and be like a board and then eventually be uncomfortable and then have to get up and walk around my apartment. And I couldn't even have the energy to walk to the drugstore to get some Tylenols. I just had to settle for ibuprofen and aspirin, right? And helped a little bit, but I've taken an awful lot of them today, and I'm going to have to take a couple of more before I go to bed. I'm really going to try to stay in bed for at least a few hours before I get up tonight. But I think sometimes in that pushback, right, that pushback that's meant to quiet us, to make us give up, to make us keep our mouth closed, that it's only in our own choices and in our own determination, choosing truth over belonging, right? Because possibly I'm going to rub people wrong with this kind of content. It's not made, right? I explore the inside and the outside, but it's in those emotions and not in different personality disorders. But I have been taking my lessons for myself in doing a little bit of healing and a little bit of movement forward for those other parts of me so they don't step into that doo doo next time around, that I could create the best life for myself, a better life, right? And I managed to have some good moments in my life despite, but it was a little help from my friends and my friends. Okay, you guys, let's get into a card here and just go into it for a couple of minutes and then call it a night. And might be pertinent to the conversation. It might not. Okay, we're going to take this card right here. Make sure there's only one there. There is. Are you kidding me? Tammy, take a guess at what the word is tonight. You saw me shuffle the cards and pull a card. Take a guess what that word is tonight. Incredible. Absolutely just incredible. Companionship is the company we keep in trust and in close proximity. Isn't that amazing? This is the third time, 54 powerful cards, powerful words. And I have words in here I have never pulled before. 3 times in one word on 1 week. That's absolutely incredible, but it's so true. Companionship is the company we keep in trust and in close proximity. And I'm so grateful to have you guys hang out with me, especially when I delve into some of these really funky topics that people might not be talking about. But I think they're important topics, really important topics. And I think, being somebody who's had her trust broken, and that's a big thing with broken empaths, right? Is we lose our trust. That's why I delve in so deep. That's why I pick through things and then do research on those things that I pick through. And I'm very picky about the people that I take my lessons from, because some of them I do recognize them. And I know that somewheres along the line that we are meant, right? Just like Jesus and Mary Magdalene, to team up and help each other, right? To make a better world, to get us to that state where whatever or whoever could truly take the reins. Because in this moment, as humans, we do have free choice and we know what's going on with a lot of that free choice, don't we? Okay, you guys, I'm going to leave it like that because I need to take another aspirin and call it a night. But I showed up. I showed up anyway, you guys. And I showed up in a way that I think that I stuck to the content that I really wanted to delve into tonight. Well, maybe I didn't want to delve into it, but I felt pulled, right? I felt that it was important that I show up and not let that pushback push me over the cliff, that I was going to push back myself. And I think I did that. And I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to feel 100 times better. And I learned my lesson. I'm not going to overpack my backpack anymore. That was absolute crazy, especially when I take those 6 mile, 8 mile walks, right? It's too much. I'm 65 years old. I can do those nice long walks. It didn't bother my legs in any way. But when I'm hauling too, yeah, that was kind of silly of me. I learned my lesson in that. You guys, you have a great night. Can you imagine companionship again 3 times in a span of a week? We pulled this card. It's important. I'm not quite sure, right? But if we pull it again this week, I'll delve into it in a different perspective, in a different way, and maybe it'll hit a little bit better, right? I think we're all supposed to be moving together, right? We're creating the best human beings we possibly can. But in doing that, we have to create the best world, right? And I think this world is pretty amazing. I love being a human being, right? And I think those other parts of me appreciate it too, unless, right, Cindy makes a bad decision and ends up hurting herself. I'm not quite sure if those other parts of me feel that pain, right? And it's not my intent. My intent is always to do good by those other parts of me, 100%. Okay, you guys. Eugene, right? Thank you so much. Tammy, as always, you're so beautiful. Thank you so much for sitting. I know it was a heavy one today, and yeah, I'm kind of curious that word companionship came up 3 times in the span of a week. You guys have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye. Again tonight, it's not letting me end my live show. Let me see here if I can minimize. And no, it won't let me. I'll have to contact Google or YouTube and let them know that it's not letting me end my live properly. Everybody have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow.